agenda, so we'll see how it goes. And we'll get out a little early tonight. But thank all of you for coming and for being here. We'll begin with our invocation, and Linda others here and ask her if she'll lead us in prayer. I want to remember Valerie's family on the passing of her mom, and Scott's family on the passing of his dad, and they have been through so much, but did such a great job taking care of their family members. And so, if you would remember them in our prayers, that would be great. And,
Let's bow in prayer. Our Father, how we just thank you tonight that we can come together as a community, Lord, and we pray that you will be with us and guide us in all we just said and done. Lord, I just pray tonight that you will be with Valerie and with Scott and the loss of their parent, one's mom and one's father, and you will just bless them, Lord, and help to heal the hurt that this always causes. We pray tonight that you will guide our meeting, everything we said and done, that you will guide us in that. Bless these things in your name.
thank you. Let's all stand and say our pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now for our introductions.
Valerie Halverson, Town Clerk. Diane Laughlin.
Mike Alex,
Diga Barr.
Tim Sessoms,
Alicia Flowers.
Scott Ruger, Town Manager.
Katrina Witt, Finance Officer.
William Hill, Town Attorney.
okay. Moving on in our order of business, the consent agenda. Had some time to look over that. Does anyone have a motion to approve the consent
I have a
agenda?
question.
Okay.
On page 3 of the check detail, $1,451 for parking lot road repairs at the Lakewood Park. Could you just give us a little rundown on that?
I'll actually let Jeff do that, the Parks and Rec Manager.
Yes, that was repairs done. We had lights that weren't coming on in our parking lot, which was a safety issue. And they actually had to troubleshoot it, get a lift, replace bulbs, about 4 or 5 bulbs there. And there was a wiring issue where it was actually short-circuiting our box, and they had to do that. So it was about 3 days worth of work that they had to do to fix the part.
Thank you, Jeff. That's it. I'll make a motion that, is that what you want?
Sure.
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Ms. Flowers, second by Ms. McClellan. All in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Okay. So we ready for now? Yeah, any announcements?
I'd like to remind everyone of our Christmas tree lighting service. It's going to be November the 22nd. That's a Saturday evening, and the time is 5:30, and that's at our athletic park. And it's for that, so you can put it on your calendars to be planning for it.
Okay. Any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move right into public comments. It's very great tonight to have the principal of Summerfield Elementary here with us, Jill Walsh. Ms. Walsh has been at Summerfield Elementary for 9 years, and my kids have gone through there, and it's a phenomenal school, and we appreciate her coming and talk to us this evening.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you for letting me go first. I'm sure everybody can see we've got a big event going on tonight at school, a curriculum night. But I just want to take a few minutes tonight to talk about a couple of things very briefly. I'm sure that, well, first I want to say thank you too for those of you who came out to support us for our run fundraiser a couple weeks ago. I know a couple of you guys came out, a couple of people put their names, so we really appreciate that. Our school raised $34,000 for our programs at Summerfield and Summerfield today, so they are very amazing, and lots of folks in our community supported us. So we really appreciate that support, and we're just truly amazed with what we can do this year with donations, so thank you. So I'm just going to mention tonight, hopefully you guys have already heard this, but on the ballot in November, there's going to be an addendum for a quarter cent sales tax increase. Have you guys heard about that? Do you know what that is? We are pretty much blasting. We've been asked to get out there and talk about it, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. You know, as you probably know, Guilford County Schools has been hit hard over the last few years with continued budget cuts. We have fewer teachers, larger class sizes, less supplies and textbooks, and less funding for teacher training. The Guilford County Commissioners have agreed to place a 1/4 cent sales tax on the November ballot, which would generate money for our schools that could generate up to $14 million annually. Exempt items, which I think this is really important, would be groceries, prescription drugs, and gas would be exempt from this 1/4 cent sales tax. If approved, the money would be used for keeping more classroom teachers. Our class sizes have increased this year. We're up to almost 29 students in 4th and 5th grade, which is just too much. Typically, we've been 25, 26, so we've really felt it this year. We lost 2 teachers because of budget cuts, and our class sizes have increased. So in talking with the commissioners, you know, we've pretty much been flat funded for the last couple of years, and you know, we have more students and we have more needs at aging facilities. So they agreed to put this on the ballot in November, and the money generated from this would go to Guilford County Schools. You know, we definitely need more classroom teachers in the classroom, we need classroom supplies, we need help, you know, maintaining aging facilities. We're very fortunate at Summerfield, but a lot of the schools around Guilford County are not looking so well. So since 2008, the state has cut $46 million from Guilford County Schools. That's 409 full-time positions. Textbook funding has dropped. We don't have any textbooks anymore. The teachers are just scrounging for materials online. Teachers pay teachers, if you've ever heard of that website. They're going to pay resources. We don't have any money for tutoring, and funding for teacher training have dropped as well. So we're not telling you how to vote in any way. I just wanted to get some facts out there. And I do have a flyer. I'm allowed to give that tonight, or I'll just leave them on the table and you pick them up if you would like. How's that? And just, you know, briefly explains what I've explained tonight. And like I said, you can choose how to vote, but we would appreciate you going out to vote on November 4th, however you choose to vote. So I'll put those on the table before I go. And also started a conversation this summer with Tim Sessoms, and we're trying to brainstorm ways that we could get the community more involved with the school. I've thought about this before too. So I sat down and brainstormed some ideas and, you know, ways that the community can get involved. And some of you came last year and did our community reader day, so that was awesome. Have you guys come in for that? And I was just thinking, you know, what kind of things can we basically put you to work, and we will. But there's lots of ideas from, we have a school garden that is just phenomenal, but we need help with weeding and watering, and that's if you're an outdoorsy person and you like to garden, we need help with that on a weekly basis. This coming Sunday, there's a beautification day that's been organized by our team dads. So we're going to have lots of dads out there on Sunday. Come out and volunteer hours on Sunday. That would be wonderful. So I've got this sheet also that I'll leave on the table back here, just opportunities for you to get involved in our schools. Other examples are volunteering in the media center, making copies for teachers, and we don't have anybody to make copies for teachers, so they're staying after school hours to make copies and plan and try to find resources. So we can definitely put you to work. Some of the activities would involve a background check, of course, if you're working with students. That email, that web address is on here as well. And if you're interested in the garden, there's a link on here for you to sign up for a time to come help out in the garden. So I also brought our calendar for the rest of the year, things that you all can get involved in. We have lots of family nights like Chick-fil-A night, Delicious night. And we also have a dessert raffle for the teachers once a month. We need folks to make desserts. How easy is that? The teachers love it. But I put, you know, our PTA meetings and things like that on here. So just if you want to get involved, these are some examples. So I'll leave this on that table as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much for coming.
Ms. Walsh, what's going on at the school tonight?
We're having a curriculum night.
Okay. I just was wondering.
Yes, we're going to get you now. We're excited. So I'm going to scoot back over there. All right, thank you.
And we have a candidate for clerk of Superior Court here with us tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to her now, Janet Wallace.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Mayor Sessions said, my name is Janet Wallace. I'm running for Clerk of Superior Court here in Guilford County, so I have the whole entire county. A lot of people do not know what that position entails. It is an elected position, but you have 150 employees that you're responsible for, and 2 courthouses here in Guilford County. You have one in Greensboro and one in High Point. Now, a lot of the rules and regulations come out of Raleigh, so you don't have a whole lot of say-so in some of the things that get done. But let me tell you about some of the functions of the clerk of court, because a lot of people don't know. The main thing is that the clerk of court is the keeper of the records. So if you have an issue that you want to go to court, you have to go and file papers. And so the clerk of court keeps those papers for you so the judge can have the information. Also, there's a criminal side. So whenever someone gets a speeding ticket or an infraction or some other criminal charges, the clerk is responsible for those records as well. And only what is in the official record can be considered. So it's very important that these records are kept current, accurate, and are available whenever they need to be. Equally as important is the clerk of court is a judicial official. You're not required to be an attorney to be the clerk of Superior Court, the elected clerk. However, I do have a law degree. So the areas of law that the clerk is responsible for being a presiding officer are special proceedings, which are name changes, adoptions, foreclosures, you probate wills. You also have the ability to have declare people legally incompetent, so you take away their legal rights. So there are very serious issues that come up. One of the other things that people don't understand about the Clerk of the Superior Court's office is the local impact that it has. You just heard about the 4% sales tax. The Clerk of Court collects the fees and fines that are paid when you either file a piece of paper or someone, like a citizen, has a criminal case. Those monies are collected by the Clerk of Court. The fines that are collected go back to your local school board. So that's a huge local impact. So we need to make sure that those monies are accounted for correctly. They also go back to the local law enforcement agencies. So we have approximately 5 law enforcement agencies here in Guilford County that those monies go to. The municipalities, the sheriff, the highway patrol. So it's a complex function. There's also numerous duties of the clerk that you're not familiar with. We issue, the clerk of court issues search warrants, arrest orders. One thing you may be familiar with are the jury summonses. We don't want to be asking dead people to come and serve jury duty or cats. You know, that's been in the news recently. So I am running for the Clerk of Superior Court. I have been working in the court system since 1995. I began as a child support enforcement agent for 8 years. I was then a paralegal, certified by the state bar, and now I'm an attorney. I've been practicing for 2.5 years. And I actually practice law in the areas that the clerk presides in. I'm a guardian ad litem for folks that a petition has been filed to have their legal rights terminated or found legally incompetent. I do name changes, I do foreclosures, and those laws have recently changed with the housing market the way it is, and the name changes. There's new requirements for that, so I'm up to date on all that. So I know what the job requires. I am experienced in the areas of law that the job requires me to be knowledgeable in, and I'm dedicated and committed to being on the job, doing the job at both courthouses. And I would really appreciate your consideration for your vote on November the 4th. I will be here to answer any questions, and I have some information as well that has my website and my phone number on it if you're interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Adrian Williamson.
My name's David Wilson, First off, I want to kind of clarify something that's put in the North Coast Road. Either I ran what we did like to make my point, but you know, I will talk all over the world when I talk. But I was talking about the volunteers and people that I talked to, you know, said we had paid employees, we need volunteers and more. And then I made a comment about it was 10 or 12 people that run this town that was in the clique. They weren't volunteers. The other people that run the town, you put down volunteers, they weren't volunteers. So I want to get that straight. And the trails, you know, I'm all for the trails, y'all want to do that. I kind of think myself pretty true about it. But I was having to read it, I wasn't crazy when I said trails, I thought of dirt and gravel. And I understand 60% of them are that way, not super highways. And I had a question about that last time, what they had paid trails. And then I noticed that you know, we had a little problem up here earlier about eminent domain, but they said it wasn't doing any of that. And then I was talking to some other people, and then I read in the Northwest Reserve that some towns have changed their trails by much as 11 times to try to accommodate the neighborhood. I hope we continue on that, moving in that direction. As y'all said, I'm just going to move it, so try to work with the people. And another thing I had was about ordinance, but I don't guess we're going to run it up tonight, so I guess I'll wait till the next meeting to voice my thoughts on the ordinances. And then another thing is about this middle income housing that I read about and I've heard so much about. I don't know that any of our council has anything to do with that or not. I just think it's something that's probably brought up in y'all probably talked to about it, I'm sure. The realtors got a problem. I don't think it's the town's problem. I think it's the realtors' problem. I mean, when I started out 50 years ago, got my first house, I didn't really have a house that I had a mobile home. But anyway, that's the point. I had to start off kind of small, you know. I didn't realize that I was that poor. I mean, does anybody else at that time think you have to work anytime to make it or get anywhere? I mean, we're just supposed to start out with $500,000 houses this week because our parents made us go to college. I mean, I don't have anything against anybody owning a house. Don't misunderstand me. I mean, I think it's wonderful. I've worked all my life to go that and I'm still working, and I'm almost 70 years old. You know, retirement's not in the picture for me because I got my Social Security card when I was 14 years old, and I've been working a total job ever since. But I made it, and I thought I was pretty successful. Some of what I read in the paper, Greensboro paper, and other papers, and what these realtors put out. And of course, Patty, she's got, I'm just still here, which I'm sure they contacted her. She's doing too very good, you know? And I thought I was doing all right. But everybody's got to start out somewhere. And just like when I first bought the first piece of land, I didn't give $1,000 an acre for it. And I don't blame anybody for wanting $20,000 for it now if they still own it. Because a house you bought 50 years ago that you paid $75,000 for, you can buy today for $200,000. So, you know, everybody has to take little small baby steps. Money ain't what it used to be because it's not worth what it used to be. So it takes 4 times as much to make the same dollar. So I just think that the realtors need to decide they're going to work in an area where they can buy land reasonable, put reasonable sized houses in. I mean, I don't blame anybody. I mean, you know, when I started off, a lot of people lived in Storm Mountain was great. People lived in New York Park was great. And of course, I remember when Greensboro Street, which is now Martin Luther King Boulevard, the wealthy people lived down there and they all moved out. So, I mean, you know, what's the deal about rock?
Let's go about 30 seconds.
I see you looking, but no, I just think, you know, they're trying to use the people of the town to take care of a situation that the town has got nothing to do with. I mean, the town's got involved in enough problems, like ball fields. Kids can't play ball because it costs too much. And hey, my kids play ball, play right over here. I mean, I have coach and everything else. But now we got the wealthy people that's moved out here, it's mad at us because they can't use the ball fields because it costs too much. Well, hey, that's life. You know, I hate it. I mean, you know, when you come on the lights and it costs you what, $150 to get the lights on at the ball field, or $200? You can't. Cut them off and leave them on. I mean, it's just common sense. Business is business, whether it's town business or personal. But we need to think of it as personal, because it is people's money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. William Donald?
I'm William Donnell from 7507 Strawberry Road here in Summerfield. I've been in this area for about 65 years. And basically, I promised a friend that I would come down tonight and lend my support for Miss Janet Wallace for clerk of Superior Court. And please, I can't say more about it than actually what she's pretty much said about herself. Janet's a pretty good person, and I think coming from someone who's been around here a long time, if you would please give her your vote when you go to the polls, and remember her name. And I'm going to try to help you with that with some flyers tonight, if I may. And I thank you. Thanks, council, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Donnell, for coming. Dwayne Crawford?
Dwayne Crawford, 1106 NC Highway 150 West. I'm turning in an application tonight for the Public Safety Committee, and I just wanted to read a few things off of this application for full information, so everybody knows what's going on with my application. Why do I want to serve? Well, I just borrowed from what the statement was on the Public Safety Committee, which was to review and investigate concerns regarding safety issues and make recommendations to county council. My skills, experience, blah, blah. I've got a BS in mechanical engineering, concerned with the study of statics, dynamics, kinetomatics, that's movement of things and friction, air, motion, all that sort of stuff. Structures, materials, design, safety, etc. I've got a certified advanced open water diver certification from the Professional Divers Instruction Institute. I've completed the Intro to Radiation Safety course at Oak Ridge National Lab, the nuclear lab over in Tennessee. Not the one, that's different Oak Ridge. I've completed the American Red Cross Standard First Aid course. I'm certified technician type universal in Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Institute. That's an EPA approved institute. I've attended the UNC Institute of Government Intro to Municipal Government course. I've attended Guilford County Emergency Management Introduction Day course for elected officials. Some additional information that you might find helpful. I'm familiar with, and I've already provided you guys this prior, the ISO fire suppression rating schedule. I've read key parts of that applicable down in Summerfield. I'm familiar with numerous U.S. Geologic Survey studies on local and regional aquifer systems. Have a long-established interest in serving the public. Been here for 10 years, you guys know that. So extremely familiar with town of Summerfield municipal government's history, and I have completed the background and personality, all that sort of checks required with North Carolina concealed carry handgun. So I was satisfied FBI got our background checks. So I've given you lots of reasons to consider, and I'd like to, if you decide to deny this, to at least be asked a question beforehand, why I'm being denied, and to give me a chance to respond to questions that might come up about why you want to deny my application. Got copies if anybody's interested. They want the town clerk to sign.
Mr. Crawford,
Yes.
do you want to be interviewed by the subcommittee?
Only if there's value in the committee becoming aware of my value to the town. That's what I see that interview being useful for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Gail Dunham.
Gail Dunham, 5805 Snowhill Drive. Just wanted to mention again that we have $26,500 in the budget that we'll be giving to B.J. Barnes, Dina's husband, as sheriff as part of the animal control for the county. Last I heard, we still have cats at the employee is still taking care of cats at the Gordon property. Are cats still there?
Cats are still there being cared for outside of work hours, and
But, you know, you
at
could-
no expense to them.
You said you said you wanted to do that because you like animals. But, you know, you're really treating the cats better than you treated the people that live there. And when you closed on the property, you didn't have to accept that work, responsibility, liability. At that time, you could have accepted a plain piece of property. It was your decision to accept the cats. And I love animals too, but that is not a function of the town, that's a county function, there's still liability with it. And I think there should be another remedy rather than the town being involved in animal control. On the closed session about the purchase of land, I think the address should be disclosed in the agenda. When the town was considering land on Summerfield Road, went into executive session many times, looking at different property on Summerfield Road, the town always had the address disclosed in the agenda. And looking at the statute said only closed when it's required. It does talk about negotiating, but at no point does it state about keeping the address secret. And I know that's up to a legal debate, but in the town, in the past, the town was open and provided the address, and I think that that was a good policy, because now I've picked up the agenda and the town's going to go shopping for property, we have no idea where, when, or what will be discussed. But I think, and it is perfectly legal, it would be a good disclosure point to have it on the agenda, which was done by your predecessor. I have concern about volunteers. There is a statement on the website that says the town is encouraging volunteers, but I don't see that. The Founders Day Committee has become by invitation only. There was no public notice if people wanted to volunteer for the Founders Day Committee. That was invitation only. I think it was a year ago in July, you had some excellent new people volunteering for the Trails Committee. They had experience. It would have been, we don't have new people volunteering. But when you do have new people volunteering and you decide, even though you've recommended them, you decide, no, we're going to bring in people we know. And you've denied them. And it's kind of public humiliation when someone who's forward, is qualified, new in the town, and wants to volunteers, and yet they're shunned. And I think that the statement that the town wants volunteers, somehow I think maybe removed from the website, because it hasn't been true for the last year. The other was when you just, Dwayne is highly qualified. He was denied with no rhyme or reason, and I think it's personal. I think it's just personal, but that isn't what it should be. And unlike you, Mr. Sessoms, as mayor, and you have skills. You talk to the town people, you talk to different individuals, suggested about how you have to get along. Maybe you need to work with the council members to suggest that they put aside some of their personal feelings and be a lot more open as far as being really welcoming volunteers, because that has not been the case, at least for the last year or more. So if you're going to be open, if not, maybe just remove it from the website because it hasn't been open. And I wouldn't expect people to volunteer and run the risk of being publicly humiliated and rejected by you. You have to volunteer for all kinds of things in the town and you're not rejected. And the only other thing, Scott, I know when you came 2 years ago, one of the top things at your list was you were going to reduce the cost of maintenance for the parks and change the contracts. I definitely had the impression from what you said that simple things like the grass would be, cutting the grass around the town hall, that would be done in-house. Some of the simple things would be done in-house and bring down the cost. Cost of maintaining the parks has not gone down, and it's only gone up. And I only mention it because you seem to have a plan, and that plan has worked, I guess.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to correct something Ms. Dunn said. She said that money was paid to my husband.
As sheriff, the sheriff, it goes to the sheriff of Guilford County.
Excuse me, Ms. Dunham, I believe I had the floor at this point, that money is sent to animal control, which is under public health, I believe. The sheriff's department took that over some years ago for about 3 months or so and got it fixed up, but then they relinquished that. So the sheriff's department doesn't really have anything to do with that, other than the sheriff does sit on the board as an honorarium for the animal volunteer group.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Okay, our committee reports, finance.
The Finance Committee did not meet in October, but the next scheduled meeting is Monday, November 17th at 7 p.m. And just to give you an update on fiscal year 13-14 audit is almost completed. It's gone very smoothly, and Mr. Rouse from Tim Rouse should be here for the November meeting to present the report.
Did you say November? No, November 17th. It says the next day meeting is 10:20. It's.
It was canceled.
November 17th, got it.
The historical committee,
We met last Thursday, September, had a great meeting. We were trying to get everything lined up that we want to do between now and the end of the year. We did get the plaque on the gym, and some of you all were able to come to that. And I want to thank Jill, because she worked with us so well. I got the plaque down there. 3 hours later, she had it up. They called Guilford County, they came out and had the plaque on the building. I couldn't believe it. So she was great to work with, and I appreciate that so much. But we met and we made a list of things that we want to prioritize for the rest of the year. One thing we do want to work on is getting some historical markers, federal or state markers that are on the highway. We have one in Summerfield, one. Lots of towns have several. And we do want to do that, so the committee has sort of looked at what we want to start with. And of course, Bugle Boy and the crossroads up here, we got several, we have to get wording for that and everything. And they're not cheap, but we do have, we have been given some money that we can certainly use toward that, which we are really proud of that. Also, we will work with the veterans. November 11th is Veterans Day, and we will work with them, will be on Sunday rather than on Tuesday. And you'll know about that, I'm sure you'll all get.
we'd just like to add to the conversation about the rock gym. I got to go to the dedication of the rock gym, and it was fascinating. The people who were there that were alumni, and also the gentleman who, his name was Dewey. And,
You would drive it.
yeah, got up and talked about watching that building being built in 1939, I believe it was. And talked about growing up there and playing basketball, and he told us some funny stories of things that happened in there. And that was like the whole school. It wasn't just the gym, it was the whole school. And it was fascinating to be there. And then all the alumni got together. We probably had 30 or 40 people at that dedication, which I thought was a really good turnout. But then the alumni came up and sang the school song. And it was just, it was a great, great event. And the refreshments, and it was really, really nice. So
It brought back lots of memories for all of us that were there. And the gym is in wonderful shape now. They have cleaned it up, replaced windows and all, so.
yeah, everybody there was very complimentary of how nice the gym looked.
Thank you for being
So
here.
it's, yeah, it's amazing. Thank you. Public safety?
Public safety meets tomorrow at 5:30 at the Sheriff's Department on Summerfield.
Okay,
That's not it.
thank you, Mr. Wendell. And trails and open space.
At the last Trails and Open Space Committee, we elected new officers. Jane Talbot is the new chair of that committee. We also had an interesting presentation by a former college student who had done a specific project on Summerfield Road as it related to the A-Log Greenway. And this was about 3 years or so ago he had done it. He's now graduated. He's has a small landscape design company, but he came and presented Summerfield's information, I think it was good raw level, and then some detailed information. And I know Councilman Barnes was there also, and it suggested maybe you can come before this council and make a presentation at a meeting. Just like to kind of gauge your interest. I think that's a good idea. Be glad to get him in here, maybe the November meeting, to do that. And otherwise, the next meeting is October the 22nd. That's on Wednesday at 6 p.m. And also, I'll share a little bit more about meeting with Summerfield Farms HOA later in our report.
I need to ask, why we have the August minutes and not the September minutes?
Yes. Per our policy, we have a certain number of days after a meeting that the secretary of the meeting committee has to get minutes to Valerie the clerk, and that is past, like, this happens a lot of months now, it's past the time, since we have the meeting later in the month, the Trails Committee meeting, it's past the time that we have to get the packets out to you. So you'll stay a little bit behind with that because of our policy. That's the way it's written. So. We could change the policy, but right now we have it set up where so many days to get it to the clerk, and then so many days to process it after that. So.
Any other event reports?
Do you want to discuss the possibility of having, I think when I mentioned that at the meeting, I saw the presentation, I just put it out that that might be something good that the Trails Committee and the council can have either a joint meeting or just have that little presentation. It kind of made you think about the trails, like, overall, and I thought it would be helpful to the community at large just to see that he had done. So how long did that take, Scott? You remember?
We gave them about 10 minutes for that presentation.
But I didn't know what the council might do.
You want to do it at a council meeting, is that what you're saying?
Well, that was what Scott was saying. I mean,
Fine with me.
I'd
be in favor of that.
I think that might be just
Can
something
we add that
good.
to November?
Just do it as a brief presentation.
We could.
Then we could follow up if we wanted to have further in-depth question on anything at a later time. We can jointly with the Trails Committee and some of them.
So, business from the town manager?
The first item we have is council budget amendment number 1 for copier printer purchase. The result of the conversation we had a couple months back about our copiers, our main copier printer sometimes being problematic and not delivering performance-wise, and some of the zoning maps and specifically color materials that we need often, with not just council meetings, but also Board of Adjustment and planning board, zoning board meetings. And we have worked toward identifying a specific printer copier and have one that we're trying out. But what I'm asking for this evening is simply a budget amendment. This was not budgeted, yet you directed me to pursue that, and I have proposed it as no net increase to funds, and actually taking that from another line item in parks. I'm a little anxious of doing it that way, but would rather do that and not have a net increase in our overall budget and see if we can make it work. So what I'm asking for is simply a budget amendment, because my authority to purchase is up to $10,000, but that's provided that it has been budgeted, and it has not. So if you will give me the budget amendment, I I can take care of the rest.
We don't know what you're talking about.
For the public's benefit, the council had requested that we purchase a new printer copier for
So
town
you're
hall.
talking about just the printer then?
Just done.
Yes. And to that end, the request is that you would make the budget amendment as presented, and as I said, I'll take it from there.
So you haven't gotten the printer yet?
We have one we're trying that's for a few days, and after some research and several quotes, but we have not purchased it and can't until we have the budget amendment to do so.
Scott,
Yes.
just a comment, when a copier acts up, it's just like a car, you see new cars on the side of the road, just like you do old cars. So I'm agreeing with you that we need something, but I'm not saying sometimes the copier's not gonna mess up and things are not gonna come out right. But I just wanted to throw that, this is, nothing is perfect in the mechanical world.
Right.
So are you saying you don't want to buy any copier?
No, I'm saying it's good, but it was saying like, at the recent town council meeting, the town's primary printer was discussed concerning its occasion delay needed material, and it's sometimes poor and inconsistent performance. And it has been that way sometimes. But I'm just saying, new stuff is not necessary, so
Saw that, absolutely.
we never
And
have a
just as
problem
an
again.
example,
So I don't want somebody, if you buy one and it's a bad copy, let's don't jump on you,
right.
okay?
So do you need a motion to approve this?
Just a motion for the budget amendment as recommended.
I'll make that motion, put that down, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion to approve the budget amendment for the copier.
And since I'm the
Motion by
one
Ms.
that,
Barnes,
I'm the one that asked for the new copier, I'll second that.
and an extended second by Mrs. Flowers. All in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous.
The next item on our agenda, facilities lawn care landscape maintenance service agreement. We have when, and this has been alluded to earlier in the meeting, when I came as manager a couple of years ago, we had a very piecemeal approach to our landscaping, and I mentioned this before, where we had one vendor mowing just the athletic fields, and we had another one doing all the other mowing outside of the fields, the athletic fields themselves, and then we had yet another vendor doing mulching, pruning, and we had a hodgepodge. And what we ultimately did last year, we had bought a used mower and had taken over, the Parks and Recreation manager had taken over the mowing of the athletic fields, and that has worked well. And then the plan was to consolidate all of this mowing and separate pruning and mulching, all of that into one vendor. And part of that is for efficiency's sake, but part of that is for accountability, because when you have too many different vendors, it's easy for one to say, no, that's not on my list, that's the other vendor that should be handling that. And we've seen that from time to time, and so that was really the impetus for consolidating this. And what we have done, we've had some interest in, since we budgeted in this direction, we had some interest from some vendors that really wanted to bid on this, and we have tried out some of those on a kind of individual basis for different parts of our mowing and mulching and lawn care. And this is the result. What you see before you have in your packet is the request for proposals, the RFP, to that end. And we took a very, per our policies, took a very formal approach to this because of our expected expense of it. Ultimately, because we have added some mowing from the Gordon property too, we were have been a little anxious about how close we budgeted. We budgeted $58,000 total for that work. It's 24 in each park, and then 10 with all of the other facilities, so $58,000 total. And we did advertise, go out for bids, and we had a mandatory pre-bid meeting that we held. We required all potential bidders to attend that, or they would not be considered. We held that. We very clearly identified the properties before that and pointed them to those individual properties, and that includes the athletic park, minus the fields themselves, the athletic fields, the community park, our town hall and parking lot area, the Gordon track where the hardware building is and where we had taken down the flag building. Also the new property where the mobile home park was that had just been demoed. And also our vacant lot that's on Summerfield Road. And those are the 6 categories of places within involved with this RFP. And we had the mandatory pre-bid meeting, and we had 11 contractors show up that were interested. Out of that, at that meeting, we had a question and answer session. We very thoroughly, our Parks and Recreation manager walked all the property. There's been a lot of time seeing boots on the ground, what those facilities were, and hearing what the expectations would be with such a contract. And ultimately, we set a date, and we received, out of those 11 in attendance, we received 7 sealed proposals. And those were opened publicly. They were all sealed bids, had a very specific advertised time, opened publicly, and provided in your packet was the outcome of that in terms of just a listing of who bid, their bid amount, and I had noted the 3 lowest bids. And we very specifically have a requirement that's a state requirement, but it's also spelled out clearly in our town purchasing policies. When we're doing a sealed bid process to use the lowest responsible bidder. And when we looked at the totals, what we provided you in the packets were the 3 lowest bids. We had an expectation that most likely we would have a recommendation out of those 3, and we do tonight, and I'll cover that shortly. And so what I provided you was specifically the RFP document, so you could see what's involved, so you could see the requirements before they bid, the requirements before we award the service contract, the procurement process, and just enough information there, including those 3 lowest bidders to hopefully get some sense of where we're going on this. And with all of that said, we have a recommendation out of those 3 lowest bids. Have a recommendation for Clark's Lawn and Landscaping. And this firm is actually the 3rd lowest bidder. And I'll speak to you quickly about that. The lowest bidder we had ruled out as a potential candidate based on property inspections. Just to give the public some idea of the process. We're not just looking at numbers here, we're looking for a long-term contractual relationship with the company. And we were looking at specifically the completeness of their proposal, content, experience with similar projects, similar size projects, commercial projects, the ability of the vendor and its staff, and then cost. And so what we did when looking at those 3 lowest bidders was, as I said, we ruled out the lowest bidder based on inspections. We went out and did, looked at properties. We required references from in all proposals, but we required specifically physical address so we could go out and look at properties, and we spent quite a bit of time doing that to assess. We also brought in a couple of the vendors and interviewed them in addition to checking their other references. And so it really came down from a recommendation standpoint between the second lowest and the third lowest. And of those, Clark's proposal was very complete when we received it. We felt strongly about that their properties were more representative of commercial properties, the size of Summerfield, and they had considerable long-term experience with larger properties and for a long amount of time. And we specifically required that they provide a reference, not somebody that was just a new client of theirs, but a client that they had maintained a bare minimum of a year, because that played into 2-hour inspections. Based on the recommendations of the references, and I have those, and I'll pass those out to you. It's just one page, but this gives you an overview of the references. Again, we interviewed both the second and third lowest bidders, and the difference in price between the lowest bidder and the highest is, the second and third highest Clark's is roughly $2,500, is $2,449. And based on the totality of everything we evaluated, my recommendation is for Clark's on landscape. And I'll open it up for questions and we'll go from there. We can. I mean, we very much worked on this in tandem, and Jeff, if you have anything to add.
Do you agree with the recommendation?
We went out and looked at all the properties and references and stuff that we got, and the recommendation there is best suited for what we're looking for the amount of money that we're spending and the type of service that we should be getting. That's where we.
Can you tell us how much this is going to cost?
Yes.
Is there anything but?
Absolutely. Again, we budgeted $58,000 even total for this coming year, and this particular bid is $57,900. Very close. Our ranges, I should have said our ranges on the proposals range from 53,288 all the way up to 138,126 for that same scope of work. And so this would be the recommended bidder would be the third lowest out of those.
Scott, his references, one of his references is a property manager, and they can be pretty demanding, and according to this, they have, all of these references really say pretty much the same thing, that he's very willing to accommodate. They like clockwork, you don't have to worry about a thing, but does an excellent job. If the manager and the Parks and Rec person thinks that this is the company to use, and they're hands-on with this, I can't see the reason not to
Sounds like a great thorough job.
I got a question as well. It looks quite extensive on this Clark's. Did you do the equivalent investigation on the others as well?
On the higher price ones?
Not the higher price ones, but all three. You did the same questionnaire to all three as far as references go?
No, we did not. We waited until we had looked at all. We reviewed the proposals, then we went and looked at properties for all three. And there was one there that we felt like we should cross off our list, and we did, and didn't spend any more time with that one based on the property
And that was the
inspection.
lowest bidder?
That was, and then the second bidder and the third one, we brought both of those in and interviewed them, and we had a feeling about a leaning toward one of those, and then we checked references, and also the second lowest bidder, we had used and had some experience with and knew that bidder as a vendor. So we had some sense of that for it.
Well, it looks like you did references on those three though, so there's checked beside their references, that means the references?
No, that was just internal notes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Because in other words, to better answer your question, had we had just as good or better references on the second lowest bidder, we would still have come to the same conclusion based on how good the references were for carts.
So are you looking for a motion then for that?
I'm
Any
looking
other
for
discussion?
a specific motion that, and let me pass out, this is just a suggested motion, and you can, well, got your names on, just pass it down. You can change that as you need to, but it's just to give you a guideline. If you want to go with this particular vendor, if you want to go with another, you can plug and play into this motion, but it's the gist of how I think we should do that, and I've got one for our attorney. Any one of those,
My question is, everything you have on this list is everything that needs to be done with the exception of the athletic fields?
yes.
So we're not gonna have to get another vendor to do any other stuff?
No, with the caveat that we've always had a separate, or in recent years, we've had a separate service agreement with large tree pruning, tree cutting, large trees. And so that's not really included in this, and never was.
Okay.
But it's all the other landscaping
Except for mowing or athletic fields that we're doing internally.
So
Mr.
we
Crawford,
will
do you have
not
some
be
input?
seeing all these people on
Yeah,
check registers, all these different companies. Okay.
Mr. Crawford?
I didn't hear it mentioned, I suspect it's already been done. I'm curious about the insurance, bonding, valid driver's licenses, all that sort of thing that we want from our contractors as well. They come through with all that.
We were very specific on the, in the RFP, we have a part as requirements to bid, what you have to bring to the table just to put your name in the hat. And then we have a separate section, requirements following the award of the service agreement. And that lists all of those workman's comp, listing the town on the liability coverage, all of those items. And so all of that will be part of the contract.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
When would this agreement become in effect?
Just as soon as we have all of the details, and the way that motion is drafted is if you award this particular vendor the service contract, the rest of that motion says that the attorney and I will finalize the details in the contract, and it will be specified in there, but the short answer is just as quick as we can get them to sign and go forward, because we're running out of time to start growing some grass this season.
We got somebody to cover this until y'all do all that. We got somebody.
Well, we're talking within a week
Uh-huh.
or so, that's our timeline. But it's just about finalizing the contract and getting signatures, and then we'll be ready to go.
One thing I noticed, and maybe it's just, maybe I'm missing it, but it seemed as though landscape 32 had quite a bit of detail in terms of the bid itself, in terms of identifying what they were going to do, beautification, aeration, seeding, lawn treatments, fall, seed, etc. Did the Clarks do the same detail for you?
Not exactly, they had a fair amount of detail, but really the detail, if you dig down into the process of the RFP, it says not to provide a lot of detail, because the RFP spells out the scope itself. And
So does that include a fall treatment of reseeding, planting, and so forth?
Yes.
I think it's,
Yes.
we include reseeding, I'm just looking up the dates on that.
Okay. I mean, I didn't see it in this, what I see here exactly. But I'll take Jeff's word for it. You don't need to look it up, Scott. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
And so that was a minor consideration, looking at the level of detail they put, but again, the RFP says, don't be too detailed because the RFP spells it out.
Gotcha.
But the one thing with the lowest bidder that we were initially excited about was with property inspection, the primary property they wanted us to take a look at, we did not feel that was up to really what we wanted and felt like the town should have, and we just weren't satisfied with it.
Would he be able to execute a fall reseeding and planting at this date, or would that exempt this fall and only have 1 year of the 2-year contract?
I talked to both of the last candidates, the second and third lowest bidders, just today, and both of those specifically, well, whoever is awarded, both are willing to start immediately to see what we can get to help with some of the reseeding this time. So that would be their first priority.
Mr. Anderson, I think the language that you were looking for is on page 3, the second bullet.
Yeah, I just kind of skimmed through that, and I apologize for wasting the time.
That's okay, there's a lot in there.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I don't mean to prolong anything, but on the request for proposal, just for the citizens to know, there is several points that they are required that our finance officer oversees, but they do have to have a $1 million general liability policy naming the town of Summerfield as an additional insured party. They also have to provide current workman's compensation insurance policy naming the town as an additional insured. They must provide certification of insurance, W-9, E-Verify forms, and so forth. And they also must provide a sales tax certification form upon request. So that just hope that would answer any questions that you might have had about that.
Thank you.
And we asked both of the final candidates if they could provide all of those things, and they said yes. And so the way this suggested motion is worded is that if for some reason some component of that fell through and they weren't able to deliver on that, then we would have to regroup on it. But so far they've indicated they have, and that would be for the attorney and myself to work out those details.
Any further discussion? Would anyone entertain making a motion?
I'll make a motion, I guess, to proceed with the 2-year service agreement for facilities, lawn care, and landscape maintenance with Clark's Lawn and Lawn Landscaping in an amount not to exceed $57,900 annually, based on a review of the submitted proposal, property inspections, and interview reference checks, cost in relation to the fiscal year 2014-15 annual budget, and staff recommendation. Upon the town attorney's contract review, the town manager is authorized to finalize details and execute the contract following vendor submittal and/or proof of all requirements following the board of service agreement components within the 9/29/14 RFP.
Motion by Mr. McClellan.
Second.
Second by Mr. Adams. All in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Well, we'll do a herd first.
That's because he's under this.
Now, this actually, yeah, this one doesn't work so well. Okay. Reports, updates, comments?
Okay, item C, a couple of events. From September 13th, we had 2 park events. The Touch a Truck Kids event, we had rainy weather that day, rainy, foggy weather. Somehow it was still very successful, I think, and Mr. Mayor, I believe you were there. You had any comment about the Touch a Truck event?
It was amazing. I mean, there was every kind of truck there you can name, and you could get inside of them. I went into the sheriff's department trucks that they send out for emergencies. I just went in the truck, stood around, and walked around, looked. There were fire trucks there. I thought it was also amazing how many people showed up, considering the weather that we had. I thought it was very well attended. It was just a phenomenal event. I could go on listing the trucks over there because I looked here at one of them, but
So, jumping to that evening's event at our community park amphitheater, we included the after-action report in your packets, but I would say honestly that was a less successful week, because what we ultimately did was, because of the weather and it being outside with equipment, musical, with audio equipment, we postponed it. We did have a rain date set up, and we postponed it to the Sunday evening, and the band was good. We had some in attendance, but it was a lot less than we had for our last Music in the Park event. And so a combination of rescheduling, being on a Sunday evening, and the weather was not the best combination, but
Music
we
was
tried.
good.
But music was good.
Music was really good, and the people that were there, I think, enjoyed themselves.
I think, would it be good to consider next time when we have a rain out for a Saturday event, to have the makeup day be the next Saturday? Because then you have a little bit more time to try to communicate to people, you know, that there's been a cancellation and it's gonna be good the next Saturday. Is that, do you think that's a good idea, or? Because there's no way to communicate to people in that little 24-hour period.
Well, we include the rain date in the ads up front, so you know if it gets rained out, you should know that it's the next day, but that may help.
I think the problem with that is the band. I mean, the band plays.
You don't ever know what they're.
I mean, you just basically have to tie them up, commit them for 2 weekends, and that's harder to do than committing them to a Saturday and Sunday. So that's the report on that. Also, this past Saturday, the 11th, we had the summer cycle event. I know a couple of council members volunteered for that, and would anyone like to give a word about that?
Ms. Flowers and I were there first thing in the morning. I think we both would say that it was good that we had actually ourselves and Cheryl helping, because there was a lot of traffic there at times. And there was one picture which I enjoyed, and I think Ms. Flowers would enjoy it too. I sent it to the mayor and to Scott, when this fellow who came up with a wheelbarrow full of some things, and he said, I just didn't want to drive my truck, but I just thought I'd save fuel, so he drove his wheelbarrow filled with recycled items. So I had to take a picture of it, and Ms. Flowers and I kind of chuckled over that.
That gentleman's been there the last couple of years with his wheelbarrow.
I wanted the wheelbarrow.
We still have our rural roots.
And I store lots and lots and lots of tires, which always makes me happy, because then they don't wind up on the side. So it was over 200 cars.
222 is the
Unofficial count.
unofficial count,
So
which is up
it
from
was
last
really
time.
good. And it's always well attended, it's really good.
I didn't see one person come through that was disappointed with anything, other than the fact that they tried to bring some paint in and that was restricted.
But
they-
she said they would take it.
Well, then they pointed out where to go, and
Yeah.
were very accommodating. I would say it's just a great event. It really was a great event.
I'd like to do it twice a year, actually. I'd like to do it twice a year. I agree.
And not a county decision.
We have to work around the county's availability on that.
And I would also say that the folks that were there were folks from the prison farm, and they were overseen by sheriff's officers or guards, and they were just extremely friendly, very nice, happy to get out and help, and they lifted an awful lot of very heavy things, and I'm glad that they did, and not the rest of us. But they worked well, and Paul was there as well, and brought his own stuff in to be recycled.
I brought my stuff into the recycling.
Mr. Crawford?
At least half a dozen folks that I asked, they proactively asked, is this the only time you do it, or do you do it more often? So, that was asked.
I think Oak Ridge is doing one next weekend, perhaps?
They do it in December.
Is it December, okay, first or second?
That would be the first one. Some of the people that were there heard about it at the council. Yeah, so that was
Moving on with my report, we did settle on, I know you, most council has been in contact with Cheryl in our office. It looks like we settled on January 24th for the retreat. I may be a little behind on that, being out some, but we're working, that's a Saturday, working on that. Gordon property update, all of the demo from DH Griffith has been completed. Everything went off seamlessly with that, no problems. The only thing remaining, which wasn't part of the contract, it's just something we're trying to get done within the budgeted item, is some utility lines and poles down we had to go through. There's Duke, Time Warner, and AT&T, and we've got 2 of the 3, so we're almost there on that one. But as far as the property itself, two houses were demoed and salvaged, 5 mobile homes, a lot of steps, concrete pads, sidewalks, smaller poles, garbage, stumps, a few trees, a lot there. I think if you notice a difference when you're driving down 220 or up 220, and pleased with that, and all within budget still. And also, Bill, I want to mention the Gordon property tax thing, just so that you're not caught off guard for it. An issue that we've been working with, Bill and Trina and myself dealing with for some time, that we're trying to resolve is just a question about the taxes owed on the Gordon property. The TAS, an exempt, as a governmental body, we're exempt from those property taxes, but there's some question as to whether the town would have to pay the taxes due, even though we bought it June the 10th, the property, from that point forward to the end of the year because of the way they bill in the calendar year. And we've had a lot of discussions with, I think, the school government, and currently where it rests is our attorney is working with the county attorney on that issue. And Bill, you got anything you want to add about it?
No, not this time. The tax department's taking the position that we have to pay 6 months of taxes because it was held in private ownership before. I'm taking the position that it only applies to a tax lien. It's not me.
Who was the closing attorney?
You did a fine job. This is something
Just to be clear, we were given a credit basically when we closed on the loan in June 10th, because we knew we would have to pay from January 1 up to June 10th. So, that's a given. We were expecting to pay that, and that was part of the closing. The surprise came with the tax bill when it said we also owe the rest of the year through December 31st of 2014. So that's the questionable part. Bill's on it, and we'll keep you posted. I just didn't want you to hear about it a month or 2 from now and be surprised about it. The dollar amount is
Extra.
it's the difference. This is what we're proposing. Okay, and moving on with items on my list, with A-Lot Greenway, one thing to keep you aware of is that we had regionally a meeting from the state folks, the part of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization, through the state Parks and Recreation Department. And we are part of their master plan. We had a separate meeting with them. I couldn't attend the meeting, scheduled a separate meeting with them, phone conference. We're added to their master plan, so we're on their radar and participated that way. And also, it asks for regular 220 widening and I-73 project updates, and I thought I would kick that to you, Councilmember Barnes, if you have anything at all, 220 or I-73 that you'd like to update.
The last I heard was the projected date was to move from one side to the other was the end of October. And I won't have an MPO meeting again until November the 10th. at 2 o'clock, which I think that's where they rescheduled the next MPO meeting for some kind of a conflict with the city of Greensboro, whatever they're doing. And so, looking forward to seeing that happen. I don't know if the rain has delayed that date anymore, but that was the projected date, you know, as we're going. When they were talking about it at the last MPO meeting, I had a question for our engineer. He made a comment, and I said, yes, I know I'm living it. So I know all of us are kind of living with the 220 widening there, and supposedly they've been pretty pleased with what they're as going along with not as many snags or any problems that have been noted. I did have a question about the bridge. Did we have a date on that bridge? I never did check anything of it, just the other day. On the one on Bunch, was that date, what was that ending date? I thought that was September or October?
No, I think November, I reported on it
Was November?
about 3 months
Okay.
back, and I think it's November, but
I just been working on that the other day when I went by, so that was a good thing. I know the other day I was gonna come shoot up here right before 4:30, and I called and I said, I'm coming, can you just stick my packet out the back door? Because I was right there at Bunch, and I had to turn up and go up this way. And Julie saved my packet for me, so.
And a couple of other things on my list. It was mentioned earlier, advertising for committee positions, and we did advertise for the Finance Committee, Historical Committee, Founders Day Committee. I know the subcommittee of this council spent some time yesterday evening interviewing candidates, and sounds like we have a new application this evening for public safety, and the plan is to bring those recommendations before you at the November meeting, that I think was stated before. Another item on my report is we have had, the town has a $5,000 credit limit with SunTrust Bank, and that's been split up between myself, the mayor, the town clerk, Parks and Recreation manager. It's been the same allocation, that $5,000 for some time, and we have a policy. So sometimes that is a problem in that, for instance, my credit card limit is $1,000, town clerks is $1,000, the mayor's is $1,000, the Parks and Recreation managers has been $2,000. And sometimes we have a challenge where we need to, when we're procuring something, we're trying to buy something, we don't have enough room on the credit cards to do that. And it's hard to order some things, specifically when you're ordering them online with checks. And so we were looking through the policies, and our policy grants that authority internally for us to raise that limit. And we have put in an application with SunTrust to do that. And we've requested to raise that credit limit from $5,000 to $7,500. And we reallocated it, basically for the manager, mine would go from $1,000 to $2,000. Clerks would stay the same. Well, I'm sorry, it would go from $1,000 to $1,500. Parks and Recreation managers would go from $2,000 down to $1,500. And then the mayors would stay at $1,000. You don't seem to use it very much.
I haven't used it once.
And so that totals those, and it would also be, at times, our town planner has need to use a credit card, and so hers would be $1,500 also. So that total is $7,500, and we have applied at SunTrust with that, and I'm hoping that's the formality that we get notified that that's okay. We have a couple of things, park supplies and projector that we're trying to order, and we need to have a little bit more leeway to do that. I just wanted to make you aware of it and make sure you didn't have any issues with approach.
Do you take points or anything?
That's a warning for you.
Not personally, but the town does.
Yes. Thank you very much.
And
it's in Julie's hands, pardon, to input the changes that we agreed on. She's been sick, so I didn't have a chance to get up with her to see exactly where she's at. I can update you once she's back to work.
And that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Business from the mayor and council. Item 9A, unsealing of the closed session minutes.
Yes, sir. As you know, we can only, or council can only go from open session to closed session for a basis that's outlined in the state law. That's the only way you can do it. You take minutes in a closed session just like an open session. The minutes from closed session have to be made public if and when the public purpose for which the closed session was held is no longer frustrated. What we do is every year at this time, we review outstanding closed session minutes, and I make a recommendation on what should be released. You have that before you in the memo that I did, which is all the outstanding closed sessions. So what I would need, if you're in agreement, is a motion to release closed session minutes as outlined in my memo. Dated, the one I had is October 8th.
October 8th, 24th. Okay. Any discussion on that? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we release the closed session minutes for review and opinion for the public.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Adams, second by Mr. Flowers. All in favor, please raise your hand. And it is unanimous.
You want these back?
Yes, ma'am.
Reports or updates or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. I really, really appreciate getting these steps and action forms in the packet. They're interesting, all of us can't go to all of the events, but it's nice to know how they went and whether they were over or under budget. I just think it's very interesting and I appreciate your implementation.
Thank you. Any other?
I was gonna say the same thing. I think Cheryl does a fabulous job on these reports, and I very much appreciate it. And I also just wanted to comment on one thing in public comments about the Gordon property, just so that everyone is aware that, it's a free market. The property was for sale. It was for sale for a year. People can sell property. It's allowed. You should be able to sell your property when you want. The people were notified, this council unanimously was very concerned about everyone that was living there. They were dealt with fairly, equitably. We went above and beyond, well with the fire. Scott was very specific about it as well. It was very unfortunate that they left kittens starving to death out there. And I just don't know how you can find fault with people who have a heart and say, you know, let's take them to the shelter. Because I just got 3 kittens from the shelter. And I didn't know that they couldn't sleep about 75 to 150 kittens every week. I had no idea. Because I said, do you have kittens? Well, we don't have that many. We only have 25. I said, well, goodness, yeah, I just need 3 for my home. She said, oh, can you take more? I said, no, I really can't. I have too many animals. But those kittens would have been put to sleep because none of them has been tested. And I think that Juliet's got a good thing. It's not something the town took any hit for. It was just good people doing the right thing. It was unfortunate that they left them there, but that was not our fault.
And we found homes for about half of them, and at no expense to the town, we've been getting them fixed, getting their shots, and trying to deal with them responsibly. And it takes a little time, but we're getting there.
Thank you, Ms. McClellan. Anyone else?
I didn't have a comment. I wanted to thank some of the people that I invited to come to the council meeting to come. And this is basically what you see is what you get. And you'll get that at committee meetings if you volunteer to serve on a committee. But we do value our volunteers. We are appreciative of our volunteers. We thank those who have volunteered in the past. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to recognize Bob Williams, who served on council with us for many years. Now, you from the other side of the table, Bob. Thank you for coming and thank you for all your years of volunteering. But the town values their volunteers, so that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Anyone else? So before we have a motion to recess the closed session, I thank Ms. Wallace again for coming and being here with us tonight. And Curtis, if you have any questions, take the opportunity to ask her. Meters, that she has stayed for the whole meeting, which is very impressive. Would anyone like to make a motion to recess the closed session?
I'll make a motion to close the recess. Or close to closed session.
Recess.
Recess, closed session.
We have a pretty good motion by Mr. Adams, second by Mrs. Barnes. All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous.